Most of the time, when coaster enthusiasts think of Vekoma suspended looping coasters, they think of rough, terrible, and unenjoyable rides. However, Great Nor'easter at Morey's Piers doesn't align with this statement. For the people who don't know about this ride, it may seem confusing at first, but let me explain. Back in the early 1990s, Morey's was looking to add another high-thrill coaster on one of their piers. The choice ended up being Surfside Pier, which is their original pier, where there was an existing water park and of course a lack of space. Vekoma took their standard SLC layout and modified the supports, shaping, and where the waiting break. Due to the slight modifications, this technically makes this one of 2 custom SLCs in the world. The reason this had to be custom fit onto the pier is due to the fact it has to weave in and out of water slides and the park's log flume several times. The ride opened in 1995 as the Great Nor'easter. A nor'easter is a type of storm that occurs on the northeastern coast of the United States that are comparable to hurricanes or typhoons in strength. It makes sense to name the ride after a storm of this power due to the intense nature of throwing you around. The ride opened up with the big, bulky horseshoe collar restraints that the classic SLC trains have. Both my mother and uncle have ridden this version in the past, and while my mom enjoyed it since she was used to the old rough rides in New Jersey's past, like Rolling Thunder and Lightning Loops, my uncle said it was a rough nightmare, and his exact words when talking about it was, "That pink thing in Wildwood beat the out of me." For the 2006 season, the park decided to give the ride a fresh coat of paint and painted it all white, as it was previously all pink. Originally it was red, or a light red, but since it was in the Wildwood sun for many years, it faded to a very bright pink. And in 2008, the ride received the prototype second generation Vekoma SLC's trains. These trains had wider, comfier seats, and for the restraints, it was a lap bar with a comfortable vest as the over-the-shoulder restraint. This is what we'll see on newer Vekomas today, along with any type of new trains provided on SLCs and boomerangs. With the new trains, the ride received the new name, Fly, the Great Nor'easter, as the park was advertising the trains as free flight seats. I'm not sure why, but that's just what they did. This was the original version of the ride I rode back in 2015, and it was my first ever SLC. Even with the new vest restraints, the ride was still rough and shaky. Yeah, there was no headbanging, but it still sucked. In 2016, Morey's announced that during the off-season, they would be completely retracking the ride, giving it new trains once again, magnetic brakes, and a new paint job. The only portion of the track that remained was parts of the station. The rest of the ride received new, smoother track with better transitions and shaping, along with some of the supports being raised or lowered or moved entirely to fit the new track. This ended up being the first of 3 refurbishments made on Morey's major coasters so far, and it seems to be a new trend to invest heavily into the current rides they have rather than buying new ones to replace them, or just new rides in general. I finally got to ride the new version of the Great Nor'easter in 2021, 6 years after riding the previous version. Also, yes, they did rename it back to the Great. I was very impressed with my rides on this. The ride isn't perfectly smooth, however it's smooth 99% of the time and only has a slight shuffle due to the wheels not perfectly gripping the track. There is a little bit of space in between the side stops, but it's a lot less compared to other SLCs. In my opinion, it's no rougher than an old B&M invert, such as Batman the Ride. The ride experience begins with you having to put all of your stuff in lockers, as no loose articles are allowed on the ride. You can quite literally walk right under and around Nor'easter's most intense sections, so you really don't want loose articles flying around into people or even on the ride itself. Luckily, Morey's isn't locked into a contract with Best Lockers, so you don't have to pay for them. I don't really remember if you have to pay for them after a certain amount of time, however I do remember they were free, and every time I've been to Morey's, most of, if not all, their coasters are walk-ons or station weights. Any loose shoes you have, such as flip-flops or Crocs or slides, can be put on the side of the station in the provided bins. Once dispatched from the station, you take a 90-degree turn to the right and head up the 115-foot tall lift. The first drop is a swooping downwards turn to the right. In the front, this doesn't really do much in terms of forces, however you are met with several leg choppers on the way down with water slides and some water park overhangs. The back does have some pull down the drop and intense positive at the bottom too. The bottom of the drop, like I said before, throws a ton of positive forces on you, which is a very common thing with the Nor'easter. The first element is a rollover, which is 2 inversions and is similar to a sea serpent roll, just a little bit more compact. It starts out with an upwards half loop, then a roll making the first 2 inversions, and a half loop down. This element is super intense, and in the front you get some hang time going into the second inversion, however in the back you get hang time in the first inversion, and then you get absolutely whipped down the second inversion and into the valley and get some crushing positive Gs. Next up is an elevated turn, which in terms of forces doesn't really do much, however, it does have some good visuals since you're flying right next to the lift and have some good near misses with the supports. Next up is a sidewinder, and the valley going into the sidewinder is honestly probably the most intense part of the ride. This gives the most intense positives, which is where I think the advertised 4.5 Gs is pulled. The exit of the sidewinder is banked steeper than it should naturally be, so you get some intense laterals while hanging out of the right side of the train. Next up is a Helix, which gives some decent positives. However, the ride has more foot choppers up its sleeve as it narrowly misses the ride's final brake run, zoom flume, and the ride's station, all within a few seconds of each other. Next up is the ride's best element, the double twist. The entrance to the 2 inversions is one of the most horrifying moments on any ride if you're in the front row. This is both a head, an arm, and a leg chopper all at the same time. Zoom flume is placed right over this part of the ride, so turning into it, it looks like you're going to hit your head and the side of your body at the same time. However, at the last second, you're flipped upside down, and it looks like your feet are going to be goners. The 2 inversions are taken at a crazy pace, where you'll see the world just spinning around you rapidly, along with a ton of near misses with the lift and support structure. The 2 twists also give great sustained laterals the entire time, and in my opinion, it's the total best part of the ride. The rest of the ride is sort of just a trip back to the brakes. However, you do get some nice near misses with the ride's support structure, track, and surrounding water slides on a turn after the twists. And then there's a weird little dip that is profiled differently than the other SLCs. The turn to the brakes is unbanked, causing a lateral jolt right at the end. It wasn't that bad, just sort of weird, and honestly this could have been called the roughest part of the ride in my opinion. The brakes are massively improved on this version compared to other SLCs. For whatever reason, all the SLCs come to a slamming stop on the brakes instead of just slowing down and turning into the next set of brakes. This makes your head bash one last time into the seat back. However, due to the magnetic brakes on the Reester, the ride comes to a nice, comfortable, smooth stop and slides right back into the station. Overall, Great Nor'easter is a smooth and enjoyable experience and is currently one of my favorite coasters in the state. I prefer it to Batman the Ride at Great Adventure due to its super fun and forceful layout and insane near misses. Now I mentioned before, the ride isn't perfectly smooth and it's really just a slight shuffle along with 3 slight jolts. The one is the transition into the brakes, as I mentioned before, and the other 2 are dependent on your seat. The transition out of the first inversion on the rollover up front gives a tiny jolt but nothing painful, and the back gives one on the exit. However, I think the jolt in the back makes the ride more intense, but if you're one of those people who need a perfectly smooth ride, make sure you brace for these moments. Like I said, it's nothing painful whatsoever, just mildly uncomfortable, especially if you're not expecting it. At the making of this video, Great Nor'easter sits right outside of my top 50, and I really hope Vekoma makes a layout like this with their STC model because it really is a great layout, or just continue to make really smooth SLCs. For Great Nor'easter's final ranking, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. I recommend you take a trip to Morey's to check this out because it's one good SLC in the country. Just keep in mind, Morey's can get expensive even with a wristband. Thanks for watching everybody, I really hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, make sure you leave a like to support the channel, and of course, if you've ridden Great Nor'easter, let me know your thoughts on it in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more reviews and theme park related content just like this. Once again, thanks for watching everybody, and I really hope to see you all next time.